Recently, I went to two Starbucks, just down the street and around the corner from where my daughter Lucy lives in the near west end of Richmond, Virginia. It had been a while since I had been to Starbucks. I usually stop by Panera Bread, the one that's near where I live in Jacksonville, when I want a pastry or a coffee. So again, it's been a while since I'd been to Starbucks. Since Starbucks routinely and seasonally changes its menu, I felt lost and ill-prepared to make an order. While Lucy effortlessly placed her order, I struggled to understand new terminology for the coffee-based concoctions listed on that big menu board. There were espressos, cappuccinos, lattes, and macchiatos, which were terms I was somewhat familiar with, but then there were other combinations. They came in differing flavor combinations, and there were iced things and, well, all kinds of options that I was unfamiliar with. It's interesting that we have an incredibly sophisticated vocabulary full of subtle distinctions when it comes to our favorite beverage, coffee. But we have but one word for what, alongside gratitude, may be the most important and powerful spiritual practice in the universe: love. We say we love people, possessions, foods, and experiences, which begs the question, does saying I love ice cream and pizza dilute the meaning of love when I say I love you to a person? Let's let that question hover over our exploration of the Greek language's 8 types of love. We'll come back to it in the end. Our exploration this morning of the Greek words for love are a distillation of information contained in 2 articles. The first is the ancient Greek 6 words for love and why knowing them can change your life, which was written by Roman Krasnarek in Yes Magazine. And the other is the 8 different types of love, written by Manny Almonte for the Mastermind Connect. So let's take a look at these 8 types of love. I just want to say here that traditionally there were 6 types, but scholars have added 2 more types to the list of words that the Greeks used to express their feelings in different relationships. So the first kind of love I'm sure you all have heard of is Eros. It's named after the Greek god of fertility, who represented the idea of sexual passion and desire. This desire was considered dangerous, fiery, and irrational. It was a form of love that could take hold of you and diminish your self-control. The primal impulse to procreate became paramount over all other considerations and prior commitments. It's the kind of love we see depicted often in the movies. A primal and powerful fire that on its own burns out quickly, Eros needs to be supported and nourished by one of the other deeper, more longer-lasting forms of love. Otherwise, it becomes the impetus for selfish and harmful acts geared only toward individual satisfaction. The second variety of love was philia, or friendship. Now, this was the love most highly valued by the Greeks because it occurred between equals. It's what's sometimes referred to as platonic love because Plato did not consider physical attraction to be a necessary part of love. Philia is a love experienced by those who have become friends and have weathered life's ups and downs together. It's expressed through the loyalty of friends, the camaraderie of teammates, and the willingness to make sacrifices for those in whom you have invested your time and energy. Now, there's a third kind here called ludus, and I hadn't heard of this before. This was new to me. Ludus is a kind of playful love, which I have indeed experienced, and I think most of you probably have as well. Philia could be a matter of great seriousness. You know, philia is that time when you're in real need and your friend or loved one is there with you, sitting beside you, encouraging you, but it's a serious moment of commitment and comfort. Ludus, on the other hand, was a kind of playful love. It's a form of affection between children and casual lovers. It's a kind of fun that you might have at the beginning of a relationship. It's also the kind of loving fun that you have with total strangers when you tease or flirt with somebody that you really have no intention of following through on. They know it, you know it, but you're just sort of casually creating a momentary connection by doing a little flirting or teasing. We're engaging in ludus when we sit at a bar, bantering and laughing with friends, or when we go out dancing. It's a kind of playfulness that's an essential ingredient that's often lost in long-term relationships. It's the key to keeping the childlike innocence of love alive. It's interesting and exciting, and longtime friends, longtime lovers, longtime partners can in fact just go back to ludus by picking an event or an activity that they know they both enjoy but haven't done in a long time, tickling each other, doing something silly that you know will please the other person. Storge, or familiar or kinship love, is another form of love that doesn't involve physical attraction. It's primarily found as the natural form of affection that flows between parents and their children and children and their parents. It's what we saw in the Wisdom for All Ages story. It's not exclusive to Storge, but is found there and in good, healthy child-parent relationships. It, covers an awful lot of life's experiences. It's also the sort of love that siblings may have for each other. Sometimes storge can even be found among childhood friends that continue their relationship into adulthood. It comes from shared experience, and although it isn't the form of Greek love that is definitely designated as unconditional love, I think it's a kind of unconditional love. It's a kind of love that you feel when you feel accepted without judgment, and when you are able to give acceptance without judgment. My grandmother used to say, my grandmother Washington, my paternal grandmother used to say, I may not approve of what you are doing, but I will always love you. Pragma is a mature, realistic love. It's commonly found amongst long-established couples, lifelong relationships. Its use became popularized by the Canadian sociologist John Allen Lee in the 1970s. So we're not sure that the Greeks actually used the term this way, but it is a Greek word, and it does seem to fit in these categories of types of love. It's about making compromises to help the relationship work over time and showing patience and tolerance. It's what psychoanalyst Eric Fromm said that we need more of. He says, we expend too much energy on falling in love and need to learn more how to stand or stay in love. And pragma is that kind of commitment, that kind of love where you make an effort to give love and just rather than just receive it. And you are willing to make certain compromises for the sake of the person that you love. Philatia is the love of self. I have started on the monthly minister's message. I hope to get it out tomorrow, and it will be a more in-depth treatment of philatia. But for the purposes of today, it's the 6th variety of love. It was understood that in order to care for others, we must first learn to care for ourselves. It shares the Buddhist philosophy of self-compassion, which is the deep understanding that only once you have strength to love yourself and feel comfortable in your own skin will you be able to provide true love to others. Aristotle said all friendly feelings for others are an extension of a man's feelings for himself. In modern language, we would say all friendly feelings for others are an extension of a person's feeling for him or herself or themselves. But you get the idea. It's taking care of yourself so your well is full so that you can give to others. And then there's a weird kind of love that, was added to this list, mania, which has been considered obsessive love. It's a type of love that leads a partner into a type of madness and obsessiveness. It's thought to occur when there's an imbalance between eros and ludus. To those who experience mania, love itself becomes a means of rescuing themselves. They only feel worthy if someone is loving them or the object of their attraction returns their love the way they want them to. So since they've invested their own worth in the responses and actions of another, they can become possessive and jealous. They can feel really desperate because they need a partner to validate them. And when the other partner, the other person fails to reciprocate with the same kind of mania love, there are often real issues. It can get dangerous. Mania is also the type of love that kind of leads to codependency. This need to be reflected in the other person for fear that if that doesn't happen, then you don't exist. So I think this is the one pretty much all around negative type of love, which kind of makes me wonder whether it really should be categorized as love, but it is that sense of focus on someone else and valuing someone else, but in a very unhealthy and sometimes destructive way. Now, agape, you may have heard of, is a love for everyone. It's the most radical and selfless love. In its purest form, it's free from desires and expectations. It loves regardless of flaws and shortcomings of others. It's also considered the traditional notion of unconditional love. Agape extends to all people, whether they're family members or distant strangers. In the Bible verses that Marcia shared with you, the Greek word used is agape. And even though these verses are mostly heard at weddings, which we consider an act of romantic love, they're really verses talking about a more spiritual or godlike or all-encompassing love. And it's reminding, in the original, two people who might be coming together to build a life together, that they need to be thoughtful about entering into the marriage, and that they need to be willing to offer their love unconditionally to the other person. So that means continuing to love even when you aren't getting what you want back, even when you're being ignored, even when somebody is angry with you, that you are committed to continuing to love that person. It's commonly considered, as I said, a form of spiritual love that's bigger than ourselves, a boundless compassion, and even an infinite empathy. It's what we know from Buddhist teachings as metta, a universal loving kindness aimed not only at human beings, but toward all sentient beings. So that would mean all thinking and aware beings. I know Jyoti is excited that I said that, right, Jyoti? Agape love extends to all sentient beings. Now, the ancient Greeks were aware of these diverse kinds of love in relationships with a wide range of people, and they made these intentional distinctions between the love, the feelings, the commitments that they were willing to make to friends, family, spouses, strangers, and even to themselves. This intentionality in the way that they spoke about relationships contrasts with our typical focus on a single romantic relationship, where we hope to find all the different loves wrapped into a single person or soulmate. This puts a lot of pressure on that person, and it doesn't acknowledge the fact that as whole human beings, we need diverse relationships. We are enriched. We are made to give different types of love, to be engaged in different connections with different people, and that hearts are big places. The fact that I love you doesn't mean I can't love someone else. Well, what about marriage, you might ask? Well, legitimately, you can only build your life, your world, your family unit with one other person, or now we've learned perhaps in intentionally polygamous arrangements or polyamorous arrangements, but those are intentional. The people are still saying, you are the group, you are the person or the group that I'm going to build my life around. But that doesn't mean I can't have a best friend. It doesn't mean that I can't still have affection for someone that I dated years ago and I still value. It doesn't mean that you can't love your children and their friends parents, and you can't love the people in the congregation. And a healthy, whole person, you would have healthy, whole relationships, many different kinds. And that's what the Greeks are telling us. And that's what, oddly, our current society is forgetting or brushing over. One of the messages that we get is to be cautious, not just to seek eros, which is what, TV shows, films, and commercials are telling us, but to also cultivate philia by spending more time with old friends, or develop ludus by dancing the night away. And we should abandon a focus with perfection. We shouldn't expect our life partners to provide us with every kind of love, every need that we have for connection. And those who are still in the discernment process about relationships should be careful not to throw someone away, not to leave a relationship because that person isn't filling all your needs. It's quite possible, and most people in long-term relationships will tell you that you need other people in your life. You can go hiking with those people who like to go hiking, and you can go to a book group with those people who like to read books, and you don't need your life partner to be a person who loves to hike and to read books. We should recognize that any relationship should have a little bit of ludus in it. And that when we're talking about romantic relationships, there should be a little eros, a little ludus, and involving into a little pragma, and then some agape. That in fact, these types of love are not mutually exclusive. You can experience these different types with one person, but don't expect to experience all of them. And then another message, another takeaway could be that identifying diverse types of love can provide consolation after the loss of a loved one, after a breakup, after the breakup of a long-term, even business relationship or co-working relationship, mapping out the extent to which any of these 8 loves are present in your life. You might discover, should say 7 loves, because I don't really want you all to have mania. So mapping out 7 loves are present in your life, you might discover that you've got a lot more love than you had ever imagined, even if you are at the moment feeling intensely the absence of a physical lover or a parent or a friend. It might just be time for us to be more intentional about naming our diverse relationships, putting them into our everyday way of speaking and thinking. I'm not suggesting that you should start using Greek, but perhaps use the adjectives, use the explanation of how you're feeling towards someone, what you want from someone. Be more communicative, intentional, and aware. Because if the art of coffee deserves its own sophisticated vocabulary, then why not the art of love?